here today is because I'm an ally for my 10-year-old gender non-conforming daughter, Sabine. And why I'm an ally is because Sabine has always been fiercely herself. From the time she was just a little girl, was always picked her own clothes, picked her own toys, and it didn't matter what side of the aisle she shopped on. And she knew that, and most often she crossed the stereotypical gender boundaries. And it wasn't until she started noticing that people were noticing that she was different, where I felt like I had to really step up and get active. Because what was happening was, first of all, Sabine wasn't uncomfortable crossing those gender boundaries until people made her feel uncomfortable. One of the first instances was probably in the bathroom where an adult shamed her out of the girls' restroom because they thought she was a boy. So here's this kid just being herself and isn't aware that she's different until everybody started making it very clear that she was different. So everybody thinks Sabine is brave and courageous, and she is. But what they don't see is the sometimes crippling anxiety that she has, because she knows that in public spaces, all eyes are on her, and her body and gender identity are up for debate by perfect strangers. So as her mother, I'm an ally because I want this kid to have a world where she can be who she is and be cherished and honored, and she doesn't have to think about public space as the potential enemy. I want her existence to be recognized as equal and valuable. I want her to always have a place, and I want her to know that she is loved and can give and receive love without judgment and overflowing with acceptance. I want parents to know that trans and gender non-conforming kids are normal kids. They're just kids being who they are, and that's all they want, is to live and be recognized and represented in this world for who they are, which are just kids and just people. Challenges that Sabine has had almost entirely started with the bathroom. And I know it's a hotly debated topic, and it's one that is extremely personal to me because, again, Sabine didn't understand that being who she was not allowed in public space until people decided to confront her and make her feel uncomfortable in public space. So one of the challenges for Sabine has always been self-identifying in a public space in a way that she's going to feel comfortable, but not completely relinquish her identity. And that has all come from, unfortunately, being so challenged in bathrooms and public spaces that demand that we live by a gender binary. So she has to decide, do I use the boys' restroom and probably not get hassled, but no, I don't really belong? Or do I use the girls' bathroom and almost assuredly run up against some sort of confrontation that's going to make her, remember that there are lots of people who are telling her she doesn't belong in that space, and B, question herself, where do I belong? So I think that's been the biggest challenge for Sabine. For me as a parent, the biggest challenge, or one of the biggest challenges, is witnessing this kid, this beautiful, self-determined, funny, wonderful kid, go from a kid who would self-advocate and say, hey, you know I'm a girl, to after months and years of people telling her, no, you're not a girl, you look like a boy. Why do you dress in boys' clothes? Why is your hair short? Slowly lose some of that motivation to self-advocate. And she has given herself up sometimes to whatever people want to think. If they think she's a boy, she's happy with boy pronouns. If they think she's a girl or they know she's a girl, she's happy to use female pronouns. So I've watched my child go from this super self-confident and self-advocating kid to a kid who still is very confident and self-assured and self-determined, hasn't let anything that's happened to her change who she is. But now her voice is quieter and she doesn't self-advocate as much, and she lets people kind of think what they want to think. So she's letting these outside influences that have no say at all in who she is help determine who she is. And as a parent, that's heartbreaking. I would like to say to Sabine that she is one of the best people I know. And by watching this child stay true to who she is and not care and have this self-determination and understanding of who she is at such a young age, I tell her all the time, when I was your age, I folded to peer pressure like it was my job. And one thing I've learned from being your mom, Sabine, is how much I gave up of myself when I was growing up to fit in or to have the friends that were popular, and knowing you, parenting you, I've learned so much about who I am. And that's amazing that I've lived 45 years and probably for most of them, I haven't lived as authentically or in my person as you have and always will. And I can't thank you enough for helping me see that and understand not only how untrue to myself I've been, but how to actually be true to myself. It's a huge gift, and you're the reason why I have that gift. For me, what was most jarring was the anxiety I felt about how other parents perceived me as a parent. And parenting today feels so much like a competitive sport. And if I could offer any encouragement to parents who might be having some of the same wonderful experiences that I have had so far with Sabine, is that you have to shut those voices out. And especially when she was younger, and I had more of that anxiety about judgment and people. I've actually had other parents tell me, well, did you expose her to girl things? And I had one friend tell me that I should force her to dress in girl clothes. And I took some of that to heart when I wish I had just done what I knew to be true and follow her and let her be who she is, and let all those other folks know that who she is absolutely beautiful. And I don't need to take to heart or personally any of the misguided suggestions or advice that I know people thought they were saying to be helpful. If I could go back, I would not let those things make me second guess myself as a parent or Sabine as a kid. And I would have paid more attention to the people who were there saying, oh, she's amazing. I love how well she knows herself. I love how she dresses. I also had parents who would save superhero t-shirts for me from their kids because they knew Sabine would like them. And I think I would have built a community of support faster than I did, instead of spending the amount of time I did listening and taking to heart the folks who maybe weren't intentionally trying to make me feel bad or second guess myself, but did nonetheless. I think it's important to be an active member of a community you support, because as I've seen with Sabine, sometimes she doesn't have her voice. Sometimes she can't use it because she's so shy, or doesn't always want the fight, doesn't always want to have to watch people's mouths drop open when they see she's a girl or she says she's a girl. So I think being a vocal, I'm going to show up advocate is important as an ally because there are a lot of kids out there who maybe can't use their voice because they know that at home that's not going to be okay. Or maybe they're like Sabine and they're just tired. So they want to rest. So we need to be there to support them and to be their voice until they can get their voices back. I also think it's important because we need to change laws. We need to change how we socialize kids, and we need to change how people view LGBTQ plus kids and adults. I just read about a book being pulled in North Carolina because some group felt like a book about a boy wearing a dress was indoctrination and normalizing trans and gender non-conforming behavior. And I feel like I need to show up and shout loud because these kids are normal. And they are every part the fabric of this nation as anybody else. And they make it gorgeous and beautiful. And if you sit with these kids who have probably dealt with more things in their time here than some other folks, you can learn a lot about courage, as I said before, about being true to yourself, about living in your body and in your heart in ways I never imagined until Sabine came into my life. So I show up and I shout and I donate money and I talk to people who have different opinions because 10 years from now, I want my kid to have a world where she's just this 20-year-old person living her life in the way that every other person has the privilege of doing.